Welcome back, everybody. This is the second of two videos of analyzing data sets with pivot tables. In this video, we will be using the Google income statement, which can be found in our Chapter 15 material online. Let's go ahead and start with the data that we have. Notice that our income statement here happens to be set up horizontally. And in this case, to set up our pivot table, we probably want this information turned around. We want the revenue, cost of goods sold, and so on and so forth to be organized in rows and not to have, to be organized in columns and to have the dates set in rows. So we just want to reverse the setup. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and highlight all of the information that we have available. Let's right click and say copy, and then down in cell A24 right click and click on paste special, and in this case click on the transpose. This is a neat little function that's available in Excel once you learn it, and if you use Excel frequently, it's a very, very handy little Excel tool. And let's just go ahead and now click OK. And notice that it did what we wanted to do. We wanted to organize our data in columns as opposed to having it organized in rows. Now, if you go ahead and click anywhere in the table that we just created, let's go ahead and click on the Insert tab and click on Pivot Table. And once again, Excel is correctly identifying the range of cells and data that I want to include in my pivot table. So I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And there we have the beginning of our pivot table. Down here on tab 2, go ahead and double click on tab 2, and let's rename this as IS, or Income Statement Pivot, and hit enter. One of the things to keep in mind is that Microsoft Excel can be very picky about how the information is formatted for different purposes. Now, if we go back to our Google income statement, and on our dates, if we right click and click on the format cells, notice that the cells have been formatted by date type, and so we're okay with that, and click OK. In order for our pivot table to correctly identify dates as a date, it needs to be properly formatted. Okay, let's go ahead and start by dragging the date into the rows area, and let's go ahead and drag the revenue into the values area. And notice how it is set up. Now, if we right click on cell A4, let's go ahead and click on the group, and let's go ahead and identify months, quarters, and years, and click OK. And notice now that we have the months and quarters as well as the years. Now, if we go up to the Design tab, let's go ahead and click on the Report Layout and Show in Tabular Form. So if we go down to the rows here, we would anticipate seeing the years, the quarters, and the dates, and showing in tabular form gives us that information. Now let's go ahead and on the subtotals, go ahead and click on subtotals and show all subtotals at the bottom. Okay, and then the sum of the revenue, go ahead anywhere in this column here, right click, click on number formats, click on number, no decimal points, and click OK. Doesn't appear that it made a change, but the change has been made for us. Next then, down here in the rows, notice that we have years, quarters, and date. Let's go ahead and take this date and pull that back out of our table. Now that is more closely associated with what we want. But let's go ahead and add some comma formatting. So right click somewhere in column D, click on the number format, and down here let's go ahead and click the accounting on the symbol, click none, no decimal point. So notice that it's going to add commas to our data without any decimal points. And so with that, now you can see the revenue for Google for each year, and notice the growth from one year to the next to the next. So we can see that in 2009, we had total revenue of 23 million. 2010, we had 29 billion, 37 billion, 50 billion, 59 billion. That's tremendous growth. But to give these as dollar amounts, it can be difficult to really analyze it as a dollar amount. Probably a better way to benchmark revenue growth would be as a percentage. So let's make that change. Somewhere in column C, go ahead and right click on Show Value As, and let's go ahead and show value as percentage difference from. Let's go ahead and click on years and click OK. And that shows the increase in the dollar value for each year. But once again, we want to change this to a percentage. So once again, go ahead, right click on Show Value As. And at first I clicked on the wrong item. I should have clicked on Percentage Difference From. And let's go ahead, we want to show the year-over-year increase and click on OK. So now rather than having the dollar amount, we can see that Google increased their total revenue from 2009 to 2010 by 24%. In 2011, their increase in revenue accelerated to 30%. In 2012, it jumped to 32%. In 2013, it substantially slowed. So you can see what has happened with Google. They had a super growth period from the year of 2010 and even through 2013. A growth rate of 19% is really exceptional and would be considered to be a super growth period. But at the same time, we can see that growth is now decelerating for Google. Okay, next, one of the fun things that is available with pivot tables is a pivot chart. So go ahead, click on the Analyze tab, click on the Pivot Chart, and simply click OK. And now you can see the chart of the information that we just created. One of the other fun things about pivot charts is that as the table changes, the changes automatically appear within the pivot chart. Okay, let's go ahead and make some changes to our pivot chart. In the sum of the revenue, let's go ahead and right click on Show Value As, and let's click on No Calculation. And that takes us back to our original chart or our original data set of simply showing the revenue quarter by quarter for Google. Now let's go ahead and right click in column A on any one of the subtotals. Go ahead, right click on Field Settings. Let's click on the Custom Radio button here, and let's go ahead and click on the sum and the average and click OK. You can see that our table of information now has the subtotals of the total, but in addition to that, it's showing the average. It's kind of a neat little function that's available. Okay, now that we see how both the sum or the multiple subtotals button works, let's go ahead and right click back into our subtotals. Let's go ahead, click on the field settings one more time, and let's change that back to automatic and click OK. And now finally, let's go ahead down in the values area. Let's go ahead and drag the revenues back out of the values area. And now you can see we're back to just the years and the quarter, but there's no data being summarized. Now let's assume that we wanted to calculate the net operating profit margin. And remember that within a pivot table, we have to insert calculated fields as compared to doing the calculation within the table itself. So let's go ahead and click on the Analyze tab. Let's click on the Field Items and Sets and click on Calculated Field. Now on the calculated field, let's call this NOPM for Net Operating Profit Margin. On the net operating profit margin, we want to take the operating income, insert field, divided by backslash the revenue. And again, click on the insert field and click OK. There we have the net operating profit margin by quarter, but the net operating profit margin is a percentage and it's showing up as all zeros. So anywhere within column C, go ahead and right click on Format Numbers, and let's go ahead and turn this into a percentage with 2 decimal points and click OK. Now we have the net operating profit margin for each quarter year by year. Okay, another way to look at this would be if we go down to the rows area and grab the years and pull that over to the columns, notice that it's changed our table to year. Years are now in the columns, and the quarters are showing horizontally. Okay, another item that is available with pivot tables, another analysis tool, is the slicers. So let's click on the Analyze tab and click on Insert Slicers. You may have to click on the filter icon first before you get to the Insert Slicer. And then let's go ahead and click on Quarters and click OK. And here we have the slicer for the quarters. And so if we were so inclined to go ahead and click on quarter 1, notice that, let me drag that out of the way. Here we've changed it just to quarter 1. Now we have quarter 4. Or if you wanted to click on the control button and now click on both quarter 1 and quarter 4 at the same time, you can select and deselect by individual items by clicking on the control and then click. And then, of course, if we want to clear out the selections that we've made on our slicer, you can simply click on Clear the Filter, and it goes ahead and clears out the filter or our selections. And next, if we want to remove the slicers altogether, all we have to do is right-click on the slicer and click on Remove Quarters, and our slicer goes away. Another fun little item that we have available is the timeline. So once again, on the filters up here, let's go ahead and click on Insert Timeline and click on the date and click OK. And then to identify the dates that we want, all we have to do is find the dates that we want to include, and in this case we want 2012 to 2013. So let's go ahead and click on and drag from 2012 to 2013 and click OK. And once again, let me move the timeline. And then if we wish to get rid of our timeline, just like the slicer, let's just right click anywhere on the timeline and click on Remove Timeline, and then our timeline goes away. And always remember that when using pivot tables and filters and the like, notice you can see the filters here that are presented. If we wanted to get rid of all of our filters at one time, if you click on the Data tab and click on Clear Filters, that's going to completely clear out any filter that you may have set on the data. And one final note of caution about using pivot tables is that if we base or create calculations outside of a pivot table based upon the information from a pivot table, is that if we change our pivot table, so might the calculation, or the calculation might disappear altogether. One of the ways to help eliminate some of that is use of the get pivot data function. However, there are still limitations with the get pivot data function, so it's simply one of the limitations that you should be aware of. That concludes this video on, the second video on analyzing data sets with pivot tables.